This is a book review of Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. This book is very dense, specific, much like all of Malcolm Gladwell's books. I heard in a podcast today someone saying that anyone can write a book. And what even qualifies Malcolm Gladwell to write a book? And it is the level of detail and research that this man does to make points. We're not talking about shallow reads here. The examples that this guy goes through and the research that he must be doing to make the points that he's making, Malcolm's level of detail as an author is comparable only to Walter Isaacson, which I believe did the Steve Jobs biography. I read the Ben Franklin biography that he did. There are just spectacular detailed examples here. We're talking about the Beatles and hockey and airplane pilots, to name a few. This book's really famous for the 10,000 hour rule, though. He establishes and makes a great example of the 10,000 hour rule and how it must be applied. Using the Beatles is a very specific example. A lot of people think that they had this skyrocket success, but in actuality, they were playing hours and hours, all-nighters, 8 hours at a time together, music, and not getting really paid any money, but it was giving them their 10,000 hours to become experts. And he gives multiple examples of what it takes, but at the end of the day, you have to put 10,000 hours into whatever you're doing to become a master at it. And that's probably what this book will be remembered for most, is the 10,000 hour rule. But it's just one small aspect of this book. The book is really about what it takes to succeed. And what is an outlier? And are you an outlier? And how are you an outlier in your life? Looking at situations for what they are, researching them, plane crashes, happening in certain cultures and not in others as much, and it having to do with the norms of communication, what people are allowed to do to superiors as opposed to not do and not say. Those can affect the success of companies or people in life. There's the example of hockey players that most hockey players are born in a certain month, and it's because of the way that the minor leagues in hockey look at the age brackets. And if somebody is brought up into the higher tier because of their birth date, they have a 90% higher chance of becoming a professional hockey player because they're playing with the older, better players. It makes them become better. And it's crazy when you look at the number of professional hockey players. I can't remember. I think it's January that have the exact same birth date range, and it's very, very high. And it all has to do with the time in which they're growing up and the opportunities presented to them at that time. And they're outliers. They didn't have anything to do with that. It was just the circumstances that they were in. Obviously, the decisions that they made to play hockey throughout their life and put their 10,000 hours in and become experts at it is another thing. But these factors that you aren't in control of or you're just subject to can impact the way that your life can go very, very greatly. It talks about the generational uprising of Jewish Americans in New York and the generational leaps that these people took, and now, being from straight immigrants, now up the generations and up the jobs, getting better and better, up to lawyers, and this generation of lawyers now. And it's not because they were special, it's because their grandfather worked in the streets selling widgets to get his son into a better school. And then his son got a normal blue-collar job, which got him to get his son into a better school and now in law school. And those are the circumstances that you live in and your life is in. You have to put the work in, but if you can look at the opportunities that have been presented to you because of your multi-generational opportunities, it helps you understand that the situations that you're in now are because of the previous generations. And if you're able to recognize where and how you are an outlier and try to leverage that, it can help you succeed. But these ultimately, it's just great stories about success. And I'm trying to relate it back to myself always when I read these books. But if you're really looking for something that's a great story, I would highly recommend this book. And here's the final note is this book is a really great 1 year read. these chapters are so different. It's almost like, how many chapters are there? There's 9 chapters. I mean, you could read one of these chapters a month or every other month. We make it a 2-year read. They're so different. The chapters are so different, so well researched. It's like there's 9 books in one here. And that's one of the very cool parts. You don't have to rush through it. You can just enjoy a chapter. And if you don't like it, there's a couple chapters in here, if I'm being completely honest, that kind of fell flat for me a little bit. I didn't relate to. But it's so cool because the next chapter is so much different than that chapter. I just 86 that chapter and move on to the next one. So but in general, it was a really great book, and I highly recommend it if you haven't read it. This is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. That's another book review. My name is Bobby Dietz. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.